Hi, and thanks for joining. If you're new here, my name is Wendy and this is Nina's Jewels. My husband and I buy things at places like garage sales, flea markets, anywhere we can find things to sell online and flip for a profit. If that's content you're interested in, you're in the right place. Today's video is going to be what sold for February 25th through March 2nd. Let's get started. First, let me go over a few disclosures. We are part-time resellers. We don't do this full-time. We actually own another business, and I also work part-time for a consulting agency. But we do make a significant part of our income reselling. So if it's a side hustle that you're looking into, it might be worth considering. Also, the prices that I'm going to state are the buyer's all-in price, meaning it's the price that they paid plus shipping. And the profit that you'll see on the screen is the buyer's all-in price minus our cost of goods, minus the cost of shipping, and minus any platform fees that we paid. So with all of that out of the way, let's dive in to what sold. All right, the first thing that we sold was a women's black cotton button-up shirt by a brand called Hans Ubink. Kevin picked this up at the thrift store. He thought it looked like an interesting brand, but it was not really worth it. It took a long time to sell and didn't sell for much. The buyer was all in for $10.73, and it took probably a little over a year to sell, so definitely not a brand I would pick up again. Next up was a 2-pack of, the brand was called Pool Candy, and these were gold holographic little inflatable rings that you could put your drinks in so that they would float around in the pool. So they were like drink floats. They were brand new in the package. We got these at a garage sale for $2. These sold on our clearance sale for a total cost of $7.99. We did lose a little bit of money on these, but we were trying to just get rid of them. It was not a good buy. So we did manage to recoup $1.50 of our $2. Okay, next up was a Daddy and Me necktie and bow tie set by a brand called Brony and Bow. I had picked up several of these new with tags at a garage sale where I had bought everything in bulk. I paid 87 cents for each of the items at that garage sale. These are really cute. So if you are looking for a good gift, I do have maybe 1 or 2 more of these in actually the maroon color. This one was an olive one that sold. This one sold for $15.34. Next up was a pair of 7 for All Mankind women's jeans in the bootcut style. These we got at the thrift store for $3.85, and they sold for $27.99. Next up was a pair of men's Puma moccasin slippers. They were new in the box. We had gotten these doing retail arbitrage. We paid $12.17 for these, and they sold for $39.99. Next up was a pair of yellow and charcoal gray boys athletic shorts. We got these at a garage sale for $1, and they sold for $11.98. Next up was an item I never thought would sell. This was a lot of 4 plastic desktop business card holders. They were just various ones that I had used over the years, and I lotted them all together and sold them. So it included 2 black ones, 1 blue one, and 1 double-sided one. And those sold for a total cost of $7.44. We still made profit on that though. Next up was a little over 1.5 yard of wide gray heather diamond cable knit fabric. And that was mine. I never used it, and it sold for $14.59. Next up was one of the Moen Factory Parts aerators. This was new in the package. We got this at a garage sale for $1, and it sold for $30 even. Next up was a DC Superhero Girls 22-inch plush stuffed cuddle pillow Betty Wonder Woman. We got this at a garage sale for $2, and it sold for $12.38. It did take quite a while to sell. Next up was a Blackweb customizable backlit USB corded gaming keyboard. We actually got that at the same garage sale where we got that Wonder Woman doll, oddly. This keyboard sold for $36 even, and we paid just $1 for it. And I'm surprised it took a long time to sell. I'm surprised it took so long to sell. Next up was a pair of women's Banana Republic pinstripe shorts. They were new with tags, but they did have some kind of flaw. I think it was like either a flaw in the fabric or they had like a stain or something on them. So we disclosed that. We had gotten those at a garage sale for $1 and they sold for only $9.18. So not great on that. Next up was a box of Goldwell permanent hair color in the color teak. It was new in the box. We got this at a garage sale with a bulk buy of hair color that we did. We paid 80 cents a tube for those, or 80 cents a box for those. And this one sold for $12.99. And I think we've sold out of that hair color, so that was a pretty good pickup. Next up was a really cute IKEA plush stuffed dragon or dinosaur hand puppet. We found that in the Goodwill bins for $1.18 and it sold for $16.99. And actually we have another one exactly like it that I also found in the Goodwill bins that we listed after this one sold. So if you like it and you're interested, we do have another one. Next up was a lot of 6 women's small, I said they were neutral colors, but then the one that was on top was green, but it was mostly grays and blacks. These were all different layering tank tops and camis, and they were all in women's size small. We had gotten all of these out of a storage unit that we had purchased, and we had paid just 28 cents for all of those. Those sold for a total of $15 even. Next up was a 1979 Germany transportation travel map. We got that out of that big box of maps that we got at the garage sale. We paid just 9 cents a map, and this one sold for $15 even. Next up was a brand new sealed cassette from an artist named Nadia Salerno Sonnenberg, and it was a violin concerto of Mendelssohn. And we had gotten that at a thrift store for 13 cents and it sold for $8. Next up was a 1993 Upper Deck Fun Pack baseball card of the player Deion Sanders. And that was Kevin's and it sold for $2.29. Next up was another of Kevin's cards. This was a 1993 Pacific football card for the player Donald Hollis. And that sold for $2.29 also. Next up was 2 packages of some little craft miniatures. They were called Traditions by an artist named Donna Chapman. And we had gotten those out of a big box of crafting items, and our per item cost just broke down to only 6 cents. These sold for $7.34. Next up was an infant or toddler girl's one size mustard yellow textured hairband or head wrap. We had gotten that out of a storage unit. We paid just 28 cents for it, and it sold for $8.34. Next up was the caboose from the Precious Moments Sugartown Holiday Express train. If you watched any of our videos in the past, you know that we bought that train set. It was a complete train set at an estate sale, sold it 3 times, and it came back 3 times. It was just a cursed item. So ultimately what we decided to do was to part it out. And since we parted it out, the sales have been going really well. I think the box was cursed. That's what I decided, is that the box of that item was cursed and it was somehow making it, the sales like not stick or making the buyers not like the item. So this caboose actually had an issue with it, which happened at some point on one of the sales because it was not damaged on our very first sale. So it either happened with the second sale or the third sale. Somehow the little clip or the attachment on the caboose got broken. So we did disclose that and the buyer was still happy with it. We got positive feedback. We had gotten this at an estate sale. Our all-in cost on it, even after having to ship it out all those times and everything, was $4.20. And it sold for $17.58. So we are now starting to make some money on this train finally after all of that headache with it shipping out 3 times and coming back 3 times. Okay, next up was a lot of 3 miniature pewter tone romantic look easel back photo frames. These were gifted to us to sell by a family member, so we had no cost, and they sold for $24.68. Next up, I am going to announce the winner of the Nina's Jewels t-shirt. And that winner is Eyes Wide Open 866. Congratulations, you're the winner. Please reach out to us using our email address that's in our description box below. Let us know what size you want, and also let us know what shipping address we should send that to. And if you're interested in winning a Nina's Jewels t-shirt, all you have to do is drop a comment on this video and make sure that you're subscribed to our channel. It's that easy. And also check out our description box for the official rules for the t-shirt giveaway, and also for lots of links and information about our favorite supplies. We have a link to our Amazon affiliate store down there and lots of other products that we enjoy using. You can find all kinds of information down there, so make sure you check it out. All right, let's move on. Next up was a Harley-Davidson men's extra large black and white plaid patches pearl snap-up shirt. We had gotten this at a church rummage sale for $3.25, and it sold for $29.98. Next up was a pair of Beats by Dre purple headphones. We tested them and they worked. They came with a case also. We got these also at that same church rummage sale for $2, and they sold for $27.99. Next up was a Cookie Monster costume for a toddler by the brand Disguise. We got that at a garage sale for $1, and it sold for $14 even. Next up was a pair of men's Levi's in the size 40 by 30. They were in good used condition. We got those out of the Goodwill outlet, or the bins. We paid $1.50 for those, and they sold for $23.98. Next up was an official 2008 Beijing Summer Olympics 10-inch green plush mascot, and it was new with the tags. We found this also in the Goodwill bins for $1.50, and it sold for $13.99. Next up was a pair of Naturalizer women's shoes. They were Mary Jane wedge comfort shoes. We found these at the flea market for $3, and they sold for $18 even. Next up was another one of those cute Brony and Bo Daddy and Me necktie sets. This was one of the maroon ones that I said we still have other ones of. We got this at that garage sale for 87 cents, and this one sold for $15.39. Next up was a really cute pair of toddler girls sandals by the brand L'Amour. I got this when I purchased a big lot of kids' shoes, mostly sandals, when I was purchasing like a liquidation lot of some clearance merchandise from a local kids shoe store. They were liquidating a lot of their old merchandise, and these were in there. I had paid $9.09 for each of the pair of shoes from that purchase. These sold for $24.99. Next up was a Kinder Egg Monster Cleaner orange action figure. It was missing an accessory piece, so we did disclose that. This came out of a thrift store toy bag for 18 cents, and it sold for $9.34. Next up was one of the bathing suits from the Via Trading lot that we had gotten when we partnered with them for that video. This one was a brand called Why Like, which I think is like the worst name for a brand you could possibly have. Why Like? I don't think they did a focus group when they came up with the name of that one, because it's a terrible name. But it was a little girl's bathing suit for a 4 to 5-year-old, and it had like the sun protection in it, and it was like a rash guard style bathing suit. And that had sold for $18.89. Next up was one of Kevin's trading cards. This was a 1994 Topps Archives 1954 gold reprint card of the player Larry Doby that sold for $4.59. Next up was a Neil Med Babies and Kids Nasal Oral Aspirator Kit. It was new in the box, new and sealed. We found that in the Goodwill bins for 67 cents, and it sold for $8.04. Next up was a vintage 1976 cowboy needlepoint, a completed needlepoint that said, "Please be patient, God isn't finished with me yet." This was actually from my family, so we didn't have any cost on that, and it sold for $18.68. Next up was an OEM Direct TV connected home adapter, and it was some kind of power, USB, Ethernet. Those are all things I have in the title. I don't really know what it did, honestly. We had gotten that at a church rummage sale for 27 cents. This came in that big box of like cords and stuff that we got at that church rummage sale, and we have just taken all the different cords and stuff out of that and identified them, and stuff has not sold for a lot of money, but we've made our money back so many times over on that purchase. It was worth it just to put in the work on it. So we had paid 27 cents for this, and this one sold for $8.99. Okay, next up was a kids medium yellow and blue long sleeve waterproof art apron or smock. It was new in the package. We had gotten that when I had picked up a big bag of kids items that someone was giving away for free that I had found through the Nextdoor app. So we had no cost on this, and it sold for $10.99. Next up was a Panasonic handheld FM AM high sensitivity tuner radio. We got that at an estate sale for $5, and it sold for $34.99. Next up was 3 items that sold to the same buyer. And the first one was a buy and buy women's roll tab sleeve blouse. Then there was a Candies women's polka dot roll tab sleeve blouse and an Urban Cocoa small pebbled knit flare skater skirt. These were all items that came from they were either mine or Nina's, so we had no cost. And they sold to the buyer for a total cost of $32.39. Okay, next up was a huge reseller lot of 39 beaded statement necklaces, earrings, and sets of jewelry. They were all new in the package. These are those pieces of jewelry that we got when we were in the Goodwill bins. They were all brand new. So we had them all listed separately and in like variation listings and things like that, and they did not sell. I think we only ever sold like maybe 1 or 2 pairs of earrings, and we just did not make any money on them. We had them listed in our spreadsheet that we had paid $26.52 in total for all of them. I mean, that's based on, because the way we enter stuff in our spreadsheet, when we go to the Goodwill bins, we say how much we paid for everything, and then we figure out how many listings we have. Then we divide that amount of what we paid for the items in total by the number of listings that we have, and that's how we come up with our per item cost. If you look at it like based on weight, the weight of the items that we paid for, it was probably like a significantly less that we actually paid for the items, but you know, it doesn't really matter in the end. What we had on our spreadsheet of how much we paid for this jewelry was $26.52. And I just always go by my spreadsheet because if I start changing things after the fact, then it gets confusing. So anyway, we had said that we had paid $26.52 for this. We just wanted to get rid of it because they were not selling. We did not think that they would sell well in a garage sale, so we just wanted to get rid of it. So the way I decided to do it was as an auction. I do wish now that I had just done it as a buy it now and waited for somebody to come along and pay a little bit higher, but I am also just so glad to have it out the door, even though we did end up losing a little bit of money on this one. So we had, like I said, we had paid $26.52. I did it as an auction starting at $9.99, plus I also charged shipping. And we had 2 bids on it. The buyer was all in for $30.49. And we did end up losing technically about $7 if you consider that our cost of goods was, actually correct. But you know what? We were just glad to get rid of this item. We don't have to worry about it again. And it freed up a lot of space in our bins. Okay, next up was a 1996 Skybox EXL basketball card. This was Kevin's, and that sold for $2.39. Next up was another baseball card that was Kevin's. This one was of the player Ozzie Smith. This one sold for $2.99. Next up was one of Nina's old sweatshirts. This was divided by H&M Yoga Dog Graphic all over print pullover sweatshirt, and that sold for $11.98. Next up was a vintage Ming Arts white beaded envelope evening bag. We had gotten that at a garage sale for $1 and it sold for $11.98. Next up was a pair of Gap men's khakis. I had gotten these actually in the Goodwill bins and gave them to my son, and he had them for a while and then he outgrew them. So I had no cost on our spreadsheet because I had already rolled the cost into the other stuff that I had bought at the bins that day, but that's actually where I got them. And those sold for $15 even. Next up was a pair of Franco Sarto women's leather Olympia espadrille wedge sandals. These were actually mine, and I decided to sell those. Those sold for $23.98. Next up was a Western Digital internal hard drive. This was new in the package. We found that at the thrift store, and we had paid $3.24 for it. It sold for $64.99. Next up was an Alethea brand women's medium mustard knit one shoulder lace ruffled ruched tank top. That was a lot of words. That came out of a storage unit for 28 cents and it sold for $14 even. Next up was a vintage 1987 Apple II owner's guide only, but it was sealed in the original 1987 packaging. This was gifted to me to sell by a family member. This came from my own family computer, and so I had no cost, and it sold for $28.48. And that wraps up everything from this week. Let's go over the totals. But before we do that, I'd like to quickly invite you to subscribe to our channel. It's the #1 thing that you can do to support us, and it really helps us out. Also, if you know anybody who is interested in reseller content or might just be interested in winning a t-shirt, please consider sharing this video out to them. That would really help us out as well. All right, let's go over those totals. So the total number of sales that we had for this week is 50 items. We sold an average sale price of $17.51. Our sales totaled $875.61, and that made for a net profit of $380.57. I think that this might have been like the last week of us selling things when we weren't actively listing new things. So the sales this week were not the best, but sales have picked up a lot. We've been selling some really good things. I'm super excited to report those to you in upcoming What Sold videos, so definitely stay tuned. Make sure that you drop a comment below and subscribe so you can be entered to win a t-shirt, and we will catch you guys on the flip side.